This is Edwin K. Morris, and you are about to embark on the next Pioneer Knowledge Services Because You Need to Know, a digital resource for you to listen to folks share their experience and knowledge around the field of knowledge management and nonprofit work.
Thank you for listening to Because You Need to Know, the reference podcast in knowledge management. My name is Soni Toneme. As an art administrator, Because You Need to Know has been my go-to podcast and has helped me hone my management skills. Please consider sponsoring the podcast with your business.
Hello, my name is Laurie Sisson. I live in Alexandria, Virginia. The most interesting thing near me is my office full of dollhouse miniatures that I created and collected over 40 years in the business. My most fantastic volunteer experience was in Fairbanks, Alaska in 1967, where I had just finished my freshman year of college. Fairbanks experienced a flood that covered 95% of the city. I put together various groups to evacuate 181 children to Anchorage during the cleanup. I used the bus system, planes, and then the railroad for the return of the children. The Red Cross documented my work. I was 18. The Republican Party asked me if I was interested in politics. I work in the field of dollhouse miniatures. Recently, I rented my 1/6 scale dollhouse. That translates to Barbie scale, but this one is far from pink plastic, to a production company to film part of a teaching film for nurses. It took me under 2 weeks to prepare 4 rooms for their specifications, and they filmed it in 9 hours. I just read the question about what book I had written, and I remembered that I need to edit the book about my parents and their lives as pioneers in Alaska to be published.
What's the name of that book?
It doesn't have a name yet.
Is it always something that for authors, I'm just going to ask this, for authors, is it sometimes just easier not just to leave it untitled so you're not tethered to a concept and you just let it come out and figure out a title later? Or do you think most authors create a title and then fill it in?
Oh, mine doesn't, not until I'm finished. Then it's obvious what the name is, because it can take all sorts of twists and turns while you're writing.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, in your introduction, you talked about the first impactful, I'll say impactful for the rest of your life, experience of volunteering and coordinating and making things happen to help people. Where did you get that gene, and how do you get other people to get involved?
You're right. That was the first time that I tried anything on that level. When you need to do something, you figure out how to get it done. I have no idea. There were early experiences from the time I was maybe 10, where my mother would say, I'm working with the Cub Scouts, all these little brothers keep showing up, take the 3 and 5-year-olds and do something with them. So I would invent a club for them. We called it Field Mice. And they would hold up, they had to do everything that their older brothers were doing. So I made them tiny handbooks. They would hold up one finger and say, always eat your cheese.
Oh, my. So this is just a natural ability you have?
This is called playing. Yes.
Playing with a purpose, not just playing. You're talking about bringing in such a level of creativity to get something accomplished. That's not a natural ability, I don't think.
All the kids in the neighborhood would find me and show up at the door the second week of summer. Their parents had been totally exhausted by them. And they'd say, make us a play. So I would take all the kids in the neighborhood. We would have a play. I would write it for them, costume them, do the rehearsals, directing.
Yeah.
We'd set it up in the garage with drapes. The parents would come and film. We'd have a parade down the street to bring all the people in out of the neighborhood. We would present Aladdin, and the treasure would be in the dryer because we didn't have sets.
So what you're saying is that this ability to be creative serves building community.
You're right.
Every one of these things that you've exampled so far has been around a community. So isn't that interesting that you have, from birth, by the sounds of it, you have been other directed. You have always had a other perspective. You think that's a fair statement?
That's an interesting one. Yes, I like that.
You know what I mean by that? I'm saying that you're not doing this for selfish reasons that props you up or serves your need. Well, maybe it does serve a need somewhere in this physiological makeup you have. But you have an ability to, one, communicate, two, create, and then foster community.
And it continues.
So
yes.
Let's talk about this miniature passion of yours. Describe for the listener what we're talking about here.
Okay. This is what the mini muggles would consider a dollhouse.
What's a muggle? What you're using words I never heard before.
Well, we came up with that one because in Harry Potter, muggles are people who are non-magical.
Oh.
So if you are a mini muggle, then you are a person who doesn't understand. So the dollhouse industry has become absolutely fantastic. We have artisans in silver and crystal and who do woodworking at quality you can't believe, with mortise and tenon and all this, fabulous woods and everything are being constructed and turned into these fabulous, and in all scales, everything from this Barbie scale down to 1/44th, which is hardly, don't sneeze. So there are all these different scales, and there are collectors in all these scales, and this is an international hobby. This is a fabulous hobby.
Well, it almost sounds like it's crossing over into a profession, the way you're talking about this. I mean, is there people making a living at this?
Oh, yes. I had a friend whose husband was a CEO of something very exciting. Mm-hmm. One year she made more money than he did because she came up with miniature crystal chandeliers.
Oh, no way.
And she could not make them fast enough. And so she put them into kits and she'd teach classes in them. People would sign up. She'd have a waiting list for teaching these classes. So yes, quite possibly. There's a huge international show in Chicago, and there's a very good size show in Philadelphia, the beginning of November every year.
I'm looking at an organization called the Museum of Miniature Houses.
Yes, there are several fantastic museums across the United States.
All right, so I have to ask, is this just a U.S.-born concept, or where was the birthplace of all this?
Well, if you look in Egyptian tombs, there are miniatures. I mean, this is nothing new. This is like in the Netherlands, Petronella, what's her name, with the fantastic dollhouse. They call them baby houses. I mean, this is not a plaything. This is a collectible, and they would replicate things that they owned and save them in their dollhouse.
What's the inspiration? So if it goes back to Egypt, we're talking thousands of years of this desire to recreate real things in miniature. What does that represent in the human psyche? What do you think?
There are a lot of different ideas on this one. One of the modern ones is, and a lot of journalists pick this up and they say, well, if you can't afford it in real life and you want it that badly, you recreate it for yourself. Unfortunately, the cost of these items is not, I mean, some of these things cost, a chair costs as much as a real chair. If you have, if you have one of the collector chairs. So no, I don't think so. There is something wonderful about small things.
What's your inspiration then? Instead of thinking of it as a whole, why you and why this?
When I started into miniatures, I was a doll person. I came in from dolls. there was a problem. And of course, if I see a problem, I have to solve the problem because that's me. That's my makeup. And the problem was here were all these fantastic miniatures, and the dolls were so clunky and they would fall over and fall into the china, and they were just no. So I tried to fix up a friend's dolls, and
Yeah.
it just didn't work. So I started sculpting my own, but they were still falling over. So I had been working with my son's pinewood derby stuff, and it was still on my desk. When we do those little pinewood derby, you put a weight in the nose with some.
Yeah.
So I had little lead weights on my desk. So I put the little lead weights in the feet, but I was spending all my time sculpting feet and trying to put the little lead weight into it. So I thought, oh, I have a friend who is in the musket business because this is Virginia, and he was making bullets. And I thought, metal. So I became a metal patterns maker and started working with a forge. And I've done, yeah, I mean, the whole 9 yards.
Oh my gosh. Where does it stop?
No, it keeps going.
You fell into it
Yes.
from dolls, and then you started to remanufacture or manufacture better items, better dolls, better equipment, and then that led into
Yes. So then I ended up doing actual sculpture work for, those bas relief that you see on buildings. This building is being, yes. So I've even done some copper work. So, whatever I can think of, I can get done. It's amazing. It just happens around me that.
All right, so you've given us quite a rich history of this, at least in your own perspective of how you came through and to the present, to where you are now.
Yes.
So let's talk about this again. You're a giving person by nature, and your association with the miniatures and this nonprofit that represents those miniature participants or community.
Yes, that would be the National Association of Miniatures Enthusiasts. We call it NAME. I have been running a miniature club for decades.
Ladies and gentlemen, she just rolled in her eyes the actual number of years that she said, I'm not saying that. I am not saying that.
Yes, and since 2020, when our miniature club couldn't meet in person, we've been running, instead of meeting every month for an in-person club meeting, we've been meeting every single week. Because of that, we've added people from other states. So we have several from Pennsylvania, and we had a lady from Wyoming, Maryland, Virginia, Texas, Florida. Whoever's interested, they can join us, and we just meet and talk miniatures.
This National Association is a way that people can build community, network, build their skills, and find I assume there's different levels of people in this, with different levels of experience, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Am I painting a wrong picture by thinking that most of your folks in the association are going to be a certain age? Is it just all over the board? People are into this from every walk of life.
I'd say yes, every age. We have mostly women, but our club has had some fantastic men in it. We have one man from Southern Virginia who chimes in with us. He runs his own club, but he checks in with us. And we can call it on him if we need special effects, or everybody brings a talent with them.
I'm looking at a University of Vermont house-to-home blog site that talks about the history of the dollhouse. So I would have to assume, not knowing the history thoroughly, it really had to have stemmed off that first concept of a dollhouse. Or did miniatures show up in different ways before?
I think small dolls did.
Oh.
Because there are many books, like Hitty, Her First 100 Years, that talks about a little doll that has survived 100 years and tells her story and about all the people she's met and everything. But the little girl carries her around in a little drawstring bag around her neck.
Okay.
When the little girl gets a place, then she's building little places for the doll to live. It becomes a sort of a nurturing thing.
Sure.
Well, the doll has to have a bed.
And it just keeps going.
And then,
right?
the doll needs a chair, and I'm getting a new dress, so the doll gets
must have
a piece of scrap. And,
so this source of the University of Vermont says that dollhouses, anyway, originated in the early 17th century in Northern Europe. Dollhouses, or cabinet houses as they were called at the time, were not intended for use, but rather to display both pedagogy and wealth. So it was almost like a status symbol, at least what they're saying.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Well, and the famous ones that are in the various museums. And then, of course, there's Queen Mary's dollhouse in Windsor Castle. Talk about status.
Yeah. But it's interesting to think that the dollhouse concept, or miniature, or what they referred to as cabinet house, was more of a social standing more than a toy. I would think anybody in the U.S. would hear dollhouse and think, oh, it's a toy. It's a kid's toy.
Exactly.
So how did that evolution happen?
I think because in Northern Europe, they had cabinet makers. So imagine if you had a brand new something or other made, and the cabinet maker would also make a miniature of the same thing, and you would put it in a place of display.
Got it. Well, that is a rich history. So what is the aim of the association now? What's going to happen in the world of miniatures?
About 10 years ago, it has a sort of a flux and flow.
Okay.
So we were sort of going down in miniatures. Now it's having a resurgence, especially because of COVID. You couldn't get out, so you needed a hobby.
Yeah.
And you could keep busy, and you can order anything in the world on the internet, and it will come to you eventually. And there are marvelous things. There are beautiful, beautiful things that are being made. You just have to get in touch with the right artist. And of course, now with the 3D printer, name it and you can have it. So I needed...
Has that revolutionized how this is all done now?
A lot of it, things that you couldn't have before. So I needed...
Yeah.
So for this whole thing with the dollhouse, I needed the switch, the light switch. A friend said, oh, I can do that for you. I have a 3D printer. And he came up with the little light switches. So I put those in the room, and oh my goodness, cherry on top, they were perfect.
Well, what would you suggest to one of the listeners out there? It's like, got an itch now about all this. Where would you point them to get started?
Go to the miniatures.org website and just take a look at it. They have all sorts of things that they're doing now online that are free. They have how-to things that you just watch, and it explains how to do it. Classes, they have... It's a really good source.
Yeah. Give them a good start anyway, at least doing their own research, trying to figure out this stuff and what they might have an interest in.
That's how this film company found me. They went to the name website. They looked up Virginia because that's the area. They looked for people in their area who were club presidents. They found me, and they emailed me and phoned me.
That's pretty cool. You're not recommending everybody to get into it for the money.
Oh, no. No, this is the old joke for miniatures. If you want to make $1 million, the first thing you do is you invest $2 million in stock.
Well, let's go back to those origins. We've talked about a little bit of those first things imprint-wise that you have accomplished and gave you kind of a North Star, if you will, of how you could achieve things by doing, taking action and just figuring it out on the fly by the sounds of it, especially with the evacuation in Anchorage. You didn't pull up a resource and say, oh, I'll just do this.
I was a reader as a kid. One summer, I read a stack of old Nancy Drew books that was as tall as I was. My aunt had cleaned out her closet, and so I inherited the Nancy Drews. I love those. I inhaled them. It was the plucky, young, adventurous. So, yes, absolutely.
So you refer to your parents as pioneers. Can you tell me what that first glimpse of reality was for you coming up as a child?
My dad could do anything. He taught me math. He taught me to tie my shoes. One time, the teacher in one of my classes said something about, "Do you know anyone who's handicapped?" And we all said, "No." Wow, handicapped. And it wasn't until years later I realized she was trying to get me to open up that my father only had use of one arm. And it didn't make any sense to me. Handicap means you can't do something, and he could do anything. He built a log cabin in Alaska. My mother peeled the logs for the cabin. They were pioneers. My mother said she never had electricity or running water at the same time while they lived in Alaska.
Well, that had to have been quite a interesting environment for a young person in any regard to have such a and I'm assuming diverse experience of a lot of things that most people never had opportunity.
It was just how we did things. You accept as a child, you accept whatever's in front of you, and you go with it.
Well, let's move forward with how you're helping people in hospice.
Okay. During COVID, I realized that nurses needed masks. And so I was looking up patterns on Pinterest and that sort of thing. And I got involved with I'm also a DAR member, and I watched a Zoom program.
Explain the acronym, please.
Okay. Daughters of the American Revolution. This is, you have to figure out who your patriot is. So you have to trace back to someone who was involved in the Revolutionary War. There are different organizations for Civil War, and it's a genealogy-based membership.
Okay.
The woman was saying that she was working with Capital Caring, but they had a sewing problem. So see, immediately, problem, and I've got to solve it. And she was saying that they wanted to have a certain size bear, stuffed bear, for infants because when the children had passed, they wanted to have clothing from the person from the hospice patient made into these teddy bear shapes, maybe for a brother, maybe for a parent. Okay. But she said she got so emotionally involved that she couldn't do it. She said, but maybe somebody else can. Immediately, I had to go fix the problem. So I started working with the Caring Bears. When I got involved, it was right at the beginning of opening this program in our area. So I wanted to solve everything at once. I wanted to make sure that we had a logo, that we had an organization. I set up a Zoom Caring Bear session every month so that we would have a way for all of the sewing people to ask questions, because from the miniatures group I run every week, I know how important it is to keep contact with the volunteers. Yeah. And all these people are talented volunteers. You can't find somebody in your neighborhood who has a sewing machine and knows how to use it these days. And right. Maybe they're a quilter, but they don't want to do stuffed bears. So you have an even smaller pool of these talented people. And then when you don't have a project like the bears to do, you have to keep them busy and interested. And luckily, there are plenty of projects like the Veterans Pillowcase Project. We produce hundreds of red, white, and blue pillowcases for Veterans Day, and we present them in various presentations throughout the county to our veterans. You think, well, come on, a pillowcase? It's a red, white, and blue pillowcase, and it made beautifully. Our sewers are so talented.
What would you say are the top 3 attributes you have that makes you a natural leader and convener of people?
I'm a bossy person. I had 2 younger brothers.
You're a natural boss? Is that what you're saying? I'm the boss. Look
I
out.
had 2 younger brothers. My mother worked. I had to get them up, get them going, get them to school. Yeah. I had training.
That's one attribute. Okay, so you have formal training and informal training on how to command. What's number 2?
Creativity.
Tell me more about that.
That's that seeing a problem and you can't resist. It's not possible to resist. It's that, oh, I had a hard day at work and whatever. And you have to immediately get in it. The husband says, no, I just wanted to tell you about my bad day. I didn't want you to solve it.
Yeah. Creative, natural ability to lead. Third one?
A third one. I have support. I have always had family support. My parents let me go back to Alaska when they were living in Southern California.
Okay.
They let me go on a plane by myself to Alaska, buy my own fur coat so that I could survive the winter, etc., etc. They always believed in me. They always told me, go for it. My mother and I wrote hundreds of letters back and forth to each other because at that time, Alaska was considered an overseas phone call. I couldn't phone my parents.
Oh, yeah.
Any
Yeah.
problem was always over by the time the letter got to them or return letter. So, you
Right.
were on your own. My mother said it was like putting a note in a bottle and sending it off, hoping it got there.
Right, I'm
Just
sure.
wave from the shore.
The attributes you provided, I see those and I hear those. I would like to introduce the concept that you are a natural teacher,
Yes.
because everything that you've exampled is your ability to broker knowledge, to empower other people to, let's go. Let's get this thing going.
Yes.
Yeah? So where does that teaching piece come from?
At one time, both of my parents were teachers. Well, probably when I was in the 4th grade.
So you would have had that imprint from both of those, that this was a thing. But in practice, where do you think your first experience was in imparting knowledge on someone else in a formal or informal network?
Probably with my brothers.
I thought you just bossed them around.
Yeah. Well, there were also lessons in etiquette. Gentlemen would walk on the outside of the sidewalk. I don't care if you're in the
That's
2nd
right.
grade.
Yeah, okay.
This is how it's done properly.
Interesting. So from an early age, you were kind of set up to just be like this. The environment produced you, yeah?
Yes.
And of course, that stack of books helped along the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Feeding that creative mind about adventures and problem solving and taking charge.
You know, another book was The Inn of the Sixth Happiness. I got it somewhere along the way, probably at one of those school book sales. It was called The Inn of the Sixth Happiness. And later it was made into a movie. And it was about a woman who ends up in China, I think. She has to move children from orphanages to a safe place. It's a very old movie.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So the Wikipedia for the Inn of the Sixth Happiness, INN is in a hotel. The Inn of the Sixth Happiness is a film from 1958 based on a true story of Gladys Aylward,
Yes.
a tenacious British woman who became a missionary in China during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Sino. Interesting. So this was something that imprinted you on. How did it end up? I mean, what was the...
This was a possibility in my head in junior high. So I knew that this was possible. So when I was in that situation in college, I didn't actually think about this. It was just knowledge that this was a possibility. The children were getting sick in Fairbanks. We were all huddled together on the top of a mountain at the University of Alaska. The first day when we evacuated ourselves up to the university, I poured coffee. I went to breakfast and people were going through, the breakfast line. And I realized this line was so long that they needed help. I went behind the counter and I started pouring coffee. And I poured coffee, I think, for 14 hours. My arm just didn't work anymore. I sat down and I realized that there were two tables with an army table, and they were doing logistics, trucks moving in and out. How can we get this? What we're having problem with flooding in this area, this guy. And then the table with a microphone. Well, I had been a journalism student and I was good at the microphone. So I thought, okay, I could do this. And they needed help on the microphone. So I sat at the microphone reading, so and so is looking for their child, so and so is sick. We need someone with medical help, and just reading all day long as the cafeteria area was open and I was reading. I knew everything that was happening. I knew everything. And I knew that children were getting sick. I started putting together all the little pieces, the pieces that there was help available with the Red Cross. It was coming. I knew that the Army was available if you needed transportation. I knew that things that were happening.
Yeah.
But I was just inhaling knowledge for about a week until the floodwaters started going down. And then other problems came up, but I was still sitting there. And so, I was just absorbing all this information. And then I started putting the pieces together, and I would go talk to the different people. They say, oh, we're going to be over at this table for a while. So I go talk to them and say, well, this is what needs to be done over here. Oh, by the way, these people are not going to listen to you because they have to clean up their homes and they have these children underfoot. So this isn't going to work. And then I'd hear things like, there are people coming to the airport every day in Anchorage waiting for flood victims so they could help them, because just before that they'd had the earthquake in Anchorage and the people in Fairbanks had helped the people in Anchorage, so they wanted to return. They wanted to return the favor. So the idea was parents couldn't leave the area because in Alaska you've got freeze coming up. It's not like a flood anywhere else. They have a deadline. They have got to get that basement cleaned out before it freezes, because this is not a good thing. So the idea was to move the children down. I started talking to Council of Churches. I talked to Red Cross. I talked to all these different people, and we started to put together a plan. And they said, okay, now go do it. I started getting all the children together and the parents, and I would set up a roster. They had to have a typed roster. I had some friends with a typewriter. Put them on a bus. The bus would go out to the airport. I would get them with the wives, what they call it. There was a women's auxiliary flight group. And then they would take over and fly with the children down to Anchorage, where they would be met by Council of Churches people, and they would be taken to different houses and homes, and the Red Cross would oversee the whole thing. So it was a whole organization that just sort of happened.
At what age were you?
18.
That's pretty miraculous. So well done on you. And I hope that it leaves everyone with a great example of what people can do regardless. What people are capable of doing. That is just a miraculous story. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you brought up the piece with knowledge flow.
Yes.
Critical knowledge at this point, because now you're connecting dots. You are not just a broker, you're a synthesizer of things. You're assembling things in your brain pan to connect the dots. So this here, this there, that there. That is another ability, which at 18 is miraculous enough. But it is something that has the nature versus nurture debate. You just got to wonder if you just came to the world ready to go and you just had all this ready to go in your own biology. But I want to ask you, what would you define knowledge management as?
I've just been working with my husband on knowledge management, so I have the quick answer. Knowledge management is when you take a little black book and you write down a name and an address and a telephone number, and it's categorized so that you can find the information again. I think finding the information again is important. you've categorized it, you've saved it, and it's ready to go.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. The recording seems to be the easy part. People record stuff all the time. People save stuff all the time. Then when it comes to the point of a query, you can see them, I've got that somewhere. I know I have, so the quick access is definitely the other side of that coin. If you don't design it to be found. Before we part, any other words of wisdom that you haven't said yet that you would love to?
I'm just delighted to be able to share some of this information because I think by sharing our stories, it's like me picking up that book and reading it, that you don't know where that information is going to end up. It's throwing the little pebble into the water, the ripples go out, and you have no idea what will happen because of it.
That's an excellent thought to end on, because that is really the ambition for this effort, is to not just capture knowledge, but share it and make it available. So thank you for being a wonderful participant.
You're very welcome. It was delightful. Thank you.
You have just finished our latest Because You Need to Know, a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services. Please join us on LinkedIn and find us at pioneer-ks.org. If your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk@pioneer-ks.org.